Rocket League released home and away kits for the first time this season, and there was some controversy over the amount of away decals perceived to be boring white kits. And to be fair, a lot of these kits are boring white kits. I want to explore how we got here, why the away kits to begin with, and what could be done to alleviate the issue. I'm an American, and I will use the word soccer for international football and football for American football. This will be pertinent when I discuss uniforms in major sports, much of which will be US-centric. The first question is, how did we get boring white kits in Rocket League? Why don't we start by dropping in and seeing what Johnny Boy might have for this?
Gonna be honest, I didn't know that. I didn't know that American sports do away decals as white. But yeah, I don't have any experience with this. I don't know. I guess you just know who's away because you look and one of them is white, right? Is that the idea? Because Americans forget where they are. They're like, wait, are we out of town watching our team play, or are we at the home stadium? I can't remember, honey. Like, do they just need to look at what's happening because they forgot where they are? Is that a regular problem in America? Because yeah, and in the UK, football obviously is the biggest sport, and that's never an issue. Like, people don't generally forget which team is home and which is away, so there's a lot of variety with the home and away strips, you know?
Alright, that wasn't quite the productive conversation I was hoping for. Now, his opinion isn't going to be in full agreement, particularly with somebody from the US. Note what he says about Evil Genius's decal, which is going to be in contrast with Lawler's, although I do agree with him about Vitality's.
I feel like Vitality and EG have really missed the whole point of what an away decal is supposed to do, like what an away strip is supposed to do in a sport. It's supposed to be different, so that when your strip clashes with the other team, you could just switch to your totally different strip, but they've got another one that's the exact same. So they can't actually give any variety whatsoever.
And here's a clip of Lawler talking about Evil Genius's decal.
From stuff? Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind that. EG, pretty solid decal. Similar regard. I'd put that similar regard to United. I'm gonna give that an A. I actually like that decal quite a bit. The Dominus with the color, they managed to go to, like, these are the little things that I enjoy, right? So like they managed to put the color down through and flow it through. They use it to accent it, which is something that I thought was missing from a lot of other cars. Like, that's the benefit, in my opinion, of having like a 3-tone setup. You've got blue, you got yellow, you got white. Find a way to make it look good. I actually like that decal. Pretty solid.
Alright, so for my first point, people have wanted all white and black car options and praised home kits like NRG and True Neutral when they were very clean for being just black and white and gray. Lawler said this when he reviewed the black and white NRG home decal.
Clean. Monochromatic decals are always going to do really well for pros and stuff.
Then, he didn't like their Trash Panda look. I'm not saying it looks bad, but it looks like a raccoon with black eyes and bands around the tail end. And that does bring up that black is an equally overused color in Rocket League decals. More orgs should have colors and use them more. There are multiple teams with at least one color in their logo that they could have used for their decals, but they instead went with a black home decal and a white away decal, and they could have slam dunked it by using their colors for their decal instead. But I guess in the end, teams looked at the situation and said that the only way that you can have a black or white decal right now is with the tuxedo decal, and so they can just print money by releasing a black or white decal. And so everybody made a black or white decal. So that's an explanation for why black and white decals were made for Rocket League, but not why we use white in traditional sports. To be clear, not all sports use whites for the away team. Major League Baseball, the MLB, currently uses home whites. The National Hockey League, NHL, used home whites from 1970 until 2003, and there are still other leagues that still use home whites. Many leagues also allow teams to choose to switch it up. In college football, Louisiana State University, LSU, famously prefers their white jerseys for most games. They'll wear it for the first home game of the season to kick off the hype, and then they wear white against all their in-conference opponents at home. They only really wear their purple jersey for out-of-conference opponents. Some teams opt to do that, so the away team is in hotter, darker clothing. The NFL has a color rush game where both teams wear a special jersey with extra color. We'll circle back to this because that's going to create a very important point of discussion. One reason why sports use away whites comes from sports where teams go on the road and play 4 games in 4 cities in 1 week, and they need one color that works for every opponent on the road. So for example, the Ottawa Senators of the NHL have had a road trip that saw them play in Tampa, Florida, Sunrise, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, and St. Louis, Missouri, which is like a trip from Voronezh, Russia, to Amman, Jordan, Mersin, Turkey, Barcelona, Spain, Nantes, France, and Iași, Romania. Bear in mind that that's common, that's not special, that is a normal road trip for a lot of teams. The United States does not have the same population as Europe, but we are pretty close in landmass. So these teams aren't going to fly home 2,000 miles just to fly 2,000 miles to play their next game with only 1 day in between. They're stuck with what they have. Players might have 3 or 4 uniforms available for each game they play. They'll do laundry in between games, of course, but they're going to have spares available in case something gets damaged during a game, or one soaked in sweat, or one gets soaked in something else that they're able to put on something that's fresh in an intermission. So there's not exactly a lot of extra luggage space to carry extra uniforms of another color entirely. Bear in mind that it's not just major league teams that go on long road trips. Your minor league teams with less money do the same thing. So if the home team wants to wear an alternate kit that would clash with the one that you brought with you on the road, that would present an issue. So to Johnny Boy, I'm sorry, it's not about knowing who's the home team and who's the away team, especially if you're actually in the stadium and not at home. It's just that you don't have to run home on a 2,000-mile trip in order to get a jersey that's the right color. And the thing is that white is a guaranteed fit against any colored or dark-colored jersey. Now, there have been some exceptions. The NHL used to allow yellow as an alternative to white, and several teams in the modern era, the Kings, Penguins, Golden Seals, and Canucks, have used yellow in their away jerseys. Since then, yellow has become a normal color for teams at home. The Nashville Predators use it, and the Penguins' alternate jersey is yellow. There are discussions among fans that it might be nice to see the colors of all the away teams coming in, versus seeing the away team always in white, but being in their own identity colors when they're at home. It certainly makes sense for the Red Wings to come in and they're playing in red. It makes sense for the fans to all be in red. It makes sense for the Calgary Flames to have their sea of red. The colors of those teams are red. If you have a yellow team, then the entire stadium will be packed full of yellow. It doesn't make as much sense. It's just this sea of white, which the whiteout works, but it's not really part of your team identity, especially if white's not even part of your colors. Now in the NHL, there's only one team that doesn't include white. The Seattle Kraken are the only team in the NHL with 0 white in their jerseys and logo, including the numbers on the jersey. Why would their fans identify with white at home? I've read, but not from any kind of official source, that the third kit is why the NHL went back to home colors. It allows the home team to not bow to the color choices of the away team. If your fans aren't in the stadium to enjoy a third kit, why is it special? And yeah, there's also a huge aspect of, if you get to see your team in the third kit, you're more likely to buy the third kit. So there's also a monetary incentive for these owners. So the next logical question is, why not do color versus color games? Now obviously there are going to be some clashes between teams that have the same colors. Fair enough. 20% of matches against a red team are going to be against another red team. The color is extremely popular. Similar for Navy. But, red versus Navy would probably be fun, right? Well, let's talk about some of the color rush games. We've seen action green versus white, where, one of the teams really like white, so fine. Carolina blue versus white and gold. Again, the Saints and their white and gold, that's fine. We've seen blue versus mustard. All right, seriously, Jaguars, your team is bad enough. Do your uniforms have to be just as bad as your, And we've seen red versus green. All right, well, It's probably important to know that color blindness and color deficiency affect about 3.7% of people, 7% of men, and 0.5% of women. It does affect different races differently. Caucasians are closer to 10% of men, while sub-Saharan Africans actually have very low rates, to the tune of under 1% for men. Color deficiency can be a decreased perception of color without being completely lacking in that color. And certain types of color blindness, namely red and green, are the most common. 62% of colorblind people have, due to anomaly, green weak, 12% due to anopia, green blind, 12% protanomalous, red weak, 12% protanopia, red blind. Red and green color blindness and color deficiency look pretty similar, and they're frequently just called red-green colorblind. Blue and yellow colorblind, tritanopia and tritanomaly, affect 1 in 10,000 people. So it's quite rare, and it's actually not tied to gender, but it is genetic. Achromatopsia, or monochromacy, is the inability to see color entirely and affects 1 in 30,000 people. Rocket League tends to have 50,000 to 100,000 viewers for its regional events. If we assume that issues with color blindness don't affect your likelihood to watch streams, then we can expect that there's 1 or 2 monochromatic viewers, 5 or 10 that are blue colorblind, and 2,000 to 4,000 with red or green color blindness. And that's really why we focus on red-green color blindness. Now, I talked about that NFL red versus green game. That took place in 2015. The Jets and Bills had very similar striping, similar areas with red and green color, and similar logo positions that made teams look identical from high-angle shots. Say if you're a colorblind viewer on TV, or if you're in the actual stands. Colorblind people said they felt sick watching the matchup. When deciding if teams can play in their colors, we need to consider if colorblindness will be a factor in fans' ability to enjoy the game, or even the players' ability to play the game. An easy way to get around red, green, or blue colorblindness is to not use any of the pure colors alongside each other. 2 of the best colors are orange and blue. It's not a coincidence that orange versus blue is the colorblind mode in Rocket League, and that those are the main colors of the 2 teams. Monochromacy would be best helped by black versus white, but it could also be helped by dark versus light, which includes saturated color versus white. One of the big reasons why we have white as one of the colors for teams in a matchup is because that makes a white versus dark that's very easy to see. So, what can be done? First, why don't we take a look at what real leagues do with color? And so I'm going to pull up the primary colors that we see in the NFL and NHL teams. And we're going to notice that there's an overabundance of red, navy, white, and black. If a team doesn't use black, there's a good chance that they use navy. If a team doesn't use white, there's a good chance it's gold or yellow, which are the same to me, or gray or silver, again, pretty same-ish. And that's just because you want to have a dark contrasting with a light. You can't have a whole bunch of dark colors because it's going to be harder to see, right? Among the issues with gold or yellow is that gold can be a pain in the butt to standardize. Gold can be yellow, light gold, medium gold, dark gold, some weird mustard vomit gold shit that nobody ever wanted. I'm looking at you, Georgia Tech. For years, they struggled with having all sorts of shades of gold available, even within their own store, even on their real jerseys. After years of confusion and after years of disliking it, they finally got on board and said, we're gonna set one color, this is our standard. Now that's a hell of a tangent, but teams, be careful with the color gold. It becomes a cluster really fast. There are a lot of teams across all sports that are one hue with white and black, rather than having 2 colors and white or black. Very few teams just use 2 or 3 actual colors, as in not white or black, as their normal colors. And there are some colors like purple, green, teal, and aqua that are barely used. Teams just don't seem to gravitate towards pink or baby blue unless it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, in which case they put on a jersey, wear it for warm-ups, take it off before the game, and auction it off afterward. Yay. And maybe for the game they do wear some pink shoes or pink gloves or whatever, but not the whole darn thing. Pink jerseys, don't see them often. let's take a look at some NHL teams. Now, when you look at NHL teams, you're going to notice a few things. They're very good about having different striping, shapes, thicknesses, sock pattern, pant pattern, etc. to set their home jerseys apart. And they tend to follow similar patterns with their away jerseys to keep them both familiar and interesting. Does the stripe go down the sleeve? Is it around the upper arm? Is it at the forearm? Are there 2 bands, 3 bands, 5 bands, etc.? The presence of the huge logo on the chest gives them a chance to make an interesting logo design that will help keep their uniform unique. Maybe they use their striping patterns at the bottom and the shoulders in order to highlight what's in the middle of their chest. So unlike the NFL, they're not just tied to putting numbers on the front. Speak at the NFL teams, and honestly I thought red would be more prevalent than it really is. Again, we see certain colors are really common, especially if you combine things like yellow and light yellow and medium yellow and gold and just call them the same. And then we take a look at FIFA. Now, one of the things that people say about soccer is that kits aren't just white for one team. And when you look at the actual matchups, they are better about using, say, baby blue versus red, or maybe it's yellow versus red. But there's still a lot of countries that use a white kit. Like, there are a lot of white kits. It's not that it's foreign, but instead of being all teams wear white for away, you see that maybe a third of teams use white. And it's not necessarily away, it's just the matchup colors. And again, white works for most matchups against a dark color or a fairly saturated color. The only problem would be if somebody's colorblind and it looks like a light gray. Bear in mind that it is possible for 2 kits of one team to clash with both kits of another team if their color choices just simply make it difficult in a colorblind scenario. There aren't any such problems in Rocket League yet, but that's partially because teams are so boring with their color choices as it is. Still, Rogue is an accident waiting to happen. Blue is their primary color in both of their kits. What would they do if another team did the same thing they did with dark blue as the primary? And that's before we get into considerations for color blindness. Unlike a traveling team that plays 4 games against 4 opponents in 7 days, there's not much extra expense in having another decal ready in Rocket League, so that you're ready to combat any issues with similar colors or similar colors due to color blindness. So I think that it would be best if teams had a home decal, an alternate home decal, and then a mostly white kit. Now bear in mind, when I say mostly white, that doesn't mean white. For an example of a good white decal, look at Guild. That decal looks like something the New York Giants might wear. Their home decal did fall a bit into the trap of color, red, black and white, whereas their away decal uses their blue, it uses the red, and then it has effective use of the white, and both have good use of shape and styling to go with them in order to make it feel like a real uniform. And the shapes and styling and designs that they used on their home decal carry over to the away decal, so it still feels like the same team. And for teams with 2 good kits, do I really need to say much about Team Queso? Their kits are orange and blue, 2 of the best colors for color blindness. They would have to play another team with orange and blue on both their decals to run into a problem with color, although their kits do not offer much protection for people with monochromacy. So maybe it would be good for them to have a 3rd kit. And honestly, I'd love to see what they do for a white kit. Because as good as their 2 kits already are, maybe they'd go for a white cheddar one that actually looks interesting and cool and makes sense for a cheese team. I'm looking at you, Dignitas. White cheddar? Your mascot's an alien, not cheese. Do something with the alien. Seriously, I don't understand some of the decisions that orgs are making. So what can we do to make better decals? We could follow what real sports teams do with their jerseys in order to make our car decals look even better. Use some piping, some striping, some lines, some designs in order to make areas of the car look like you would areas of a jersey. You could look at the Octane and see its wheel wells and use those as the shoulders or, the bottom of your pants, and you could use the hood as like the front of the jersey. You could separate it out and make something that somebody might actually wear. Look at version 1. They actually took their jersey and applied that to make their decal. And these ideas aren't necessarily new. It's been in Rocket League the whole time. Look at some of the original designs and you'll see the same concepts are being applied, but most of the orgs just glossed over that and missed what they could have been doing. Another thing that the org decal designers could look at is the fact that most teams don't run with white pants and a white shirt and white helmet and everything's white. A lot of teams will have dark colored pants with a white jersey, and that white jersey isn't usually all white. There are other colors going on. There's still patterns and stripes and other things to add a little flair to it. Make it interesting. It doesn't have to be a boring white design. On top of some missed opportunities by the designers, it's worth noting that the teams are designing their own decals. That part is good. The problem is that there are some issues with the ability to design decals. For example, the wheel wells on the Octane are mirrored. What you put on the front left is going to be reversed on the front right. What you put on the back left is reversed on the back right. If you want to put any writing, it's going to be backward on the other well. And on top of that, if you wanted an asymmetrical design to keep things interesting, you can't do that. Psyonix is capable of doing that because they actually have a way in the game engine to redo the UV of the decal, but that's getting into stuff that most people won't be able to do. On the subject of Psyonix, there's more that they could be doing so that we see more colors from organizations. They need to look at teams and say, oh hey, new team joining the RLCS. What colors are you? You want to be black and white? We've already got 20 of those teams. Pick another color. You want to be yellow and blue? Congrats, we don't have a lot of those. When teams submit their decals, they need to look at the decal and go, oh, we have 40 teams that submitted black decals with a little bit of color. We need to tell the orgs that they need to use their colors. That's what real leagues do all the time, is they police what colors come in and they police what the jerseys look like. And that's why the NHL has had 2 new teams come in the past 10 years, and for both of them, they've been colors that you don't see that often. And then there's an elephant in the room. It's a little off topic to how to make better decals, but it's absolutely pertinent to the discussion. And that's that Psyonix said that these are home and away decals. I think they're going to start using organization colors in the RLCS, and maybe they use white for the away team. Which team is on the orange or blue team is currently decided by the home or away decision, which is based on what side of the bracket a team is on. The org colors of the 2 teams playing a match do not factor into which is home and away. There have been multiple times where the RLCS has put a team in orange that's a blue organization, and they've put an orange organization on the blue team, and they didn't have the infographic up the entire time showing which was on which team. It gets confusing. Now then you get to the point of, okay, well what happens if you have a red team versus a green team? This is a broadcast, it's not like Counter-Strike where maybe you could put in a setting that says I'm colorblind and fix red versus green. And that's why I think that away whites makes sense for a Rocket League. That forces the matchup to be between a colored team or a dark team and a white team, which is easy to see for even your colorblind viewers to enjoy. One thing worth mentioning is the 2 most important things that need to be in team colors are the nameplates and the field itself. They need to match so that you know which goal is yours if you start getting turned around and bumped and what have you. Getting those 2 things right is the most important part because people tend to identify cars by the nameplate and not the car color. RLCS decals and season reward decals have messed with the typical colors, but it is nice to have everything correct when you can. Getting back to the decals, I could see them requiring players to be in their decals if they're in an Octane, Fennec, or Dominus and their decal exists. On the flip side, Psyonix probably won't ban using cars other than those 3 because it's good for their sales if they can see that Squishy Muffins is playing in the new car, or if Justin's using the decal that just came out, then that's hot stuff and they want those to sell. But I do think the important thing is at least getting the colors right. On top of all that, Psyonix probably needs to fix some of their maps. Some of the maps are too saturated in color, and the colors themselves are too saturated. It's easy to lose nameplates into the background, and some of the maps look absolutely hideous. I've toyed with the idea. I have done some photoshopping and spent hours seeing what maps would look like if the secondary colors were included, and it helps. It really looks better. Maybe Unreal Engine 5 will include the option to use a secondary color on the field. Now the home team might not be allowed to use white as their secondary because that messes with white as away. They might allow the away team to use their own organization colors if they play nicely. The pink primary BDS decal might play well with the blue Team Queso decal. Psyonix might make the judgment call that there won't be many monochromatic viewers and that they're not too worried about it. Or maybe they get the in-engine ability to cast the game, and so those viewers are able to select black and white and override the colors. So to kind of cap off the video, white uniforms in American sports is a historical thing, but there are good reasons regarding color blindness on why it's still important today. And there's no reason why organizations should all be black or choose to make an all-white away decal when they can actually make something that's interesting. I know that this has been a very long-form video, and if you've made it this far, thank you, but I really made this video as a prelude to discussion. I'd love to hear from you if you were on the other side of things, but now you think that maybe this does actually make some sense. And maybe you disagree with me on some of the other things that we talked about, like whether or not they're going to switch over to having teams in their own org colors. I'm legitimately interested in the discussion over all of this. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.